on the move.
Good man walking.
Yeah, and a great play
Dead
by
man
Trey
walking.
to put it inside. 17 last
Watch the
game.
lob.
There's the lob. There's Z. Now Z goes away and goes to the line looking for the three-point play.
He's a zone killer.
Before there was the Victor Wembanyama hype, there was the Zion Williamson hype. And before the injuries, scandals, and just getting fat, Zion Williamson was seen as must-see TV. A generational prospect, the kind of dude that every team wants to tank for. Zion Williamson can change an organization overnight. That was the sort of hype that we were given for Zion. We saw his mixtapes for when he was in high school, and it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to be the #1 pick and become a New Orleans Pelican. But things happened. Zion started to get hurt. It was his foot a lot. He was missing a lot of games. And while Zion was very good on the floor when he played, that was a massive, massive if. For some dudes like Kawhi, it's load management. But for Zion, it was just injury after injury. And I think people started to get really worried that Zion's entire career would be plagued like this. Entirely possible being a Greg Oden 2.0. And then there was the scandal with like 3 different women in a pregnancy, and that got out of whack. I remember it was such an embarrassing look for Zion, and I think he did some community service thing like the day after the scandal happened, which I'd be willing to bet wasn't a coincidence, but everybody was mocking him because it just wasn't a good look. And obviously the final thing was his BMI was massive. He was fat.
But see, I don't know if he has a Moses Malone who told me I was fat and lazy.
Yeah.
Like,
it's very hard to find an NBA player that is fat. You play 82 games if you're lucky, hopefully more, and you're running around for 48 minutes. You practice every day. Like, how does somebody get fat? And especially somebody Zion Williamson's size. But he managed to do it. It was like he was inspired by Glenn Big Baby Davis. And I think that a lot of Zion's injuries had a lot to do with the fact that he was heavy. It did not seem like Zion cared about basketball. That he wanted to work to lose the weight, to get in shape, to do different training, be available. And I think a lot of fans have given up on Zion, or at least had, where they stopped paying attention to him. The Pelicans weren't really getting the national TV games anymore because the national audience had sort of moved on to the new sensation, the Victor. But quietly, Zion Williamson is back. Dude lost weight quicker than James Harden did right after he was traded from Houston. He's looking ripped now. Exactly how he always should have been. And that durability has gotten a lot better too. Across the league, so many stars haven't played a lot this year. Whether it was an Embiid, a Donovan Mitchell, Tyrese Halliburton. But at this point, with about 12-13 games left in the season, Zion Williamson has played 60 games. And for him, that's almost unheard of. Like before this season started, I would have guessed that he would have played like 40 to 45 games. And high key, the Pelicans are really, really good and really slept on. They're a 5 seed right now, about 15 games above 500. And they just dismantled the Pistons, which I know is sort of the equivalent of thinking like the bartenders into because they're being nice, but in dominant fashion. Zion had like 38 points. And the team is really, really good and nobody is talking about them. It's not just Zion. It's Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum. They're deep and they're physical. And the thing about them is they're great on both sides of the ball. They're not a team that just chucks threes the whole game, winning games 130 to 122. They have just been beating up teams. I believe they're 8 of their last 10 winning. So they've come out of the All-Star break really strong. And to make a run in the playoffs, it is always about how you do after the All-Star break. There's so much statistics that back this up. And they, along with Boston and Denver, and OKC, have been lights out. And so I'll be real. It's not the Pelicans' year. I bet they're probably a second round exit. And they're only going to be getting better. Especially if they're able to retain their core players. And especially if Zion is able to play 90% of what he's been doing in the last month or two. This is the Zion that we all signed up for. The dunks, the athleticism, the game-changing ability. This is what we're seeing now. And again, nobody is talking about it, which I think is honestly a really good thing for Zion. Part of me thinks he got too much attention. And now he can just focus on basketball, staying in shape, focusing on his training, being a good teammate, because even at one point he wanted out of New Orleans. So I'm pulling for the Pelicans in the West. I would love to see them make a run to the conference finals, and who knows, anything's possible.